Chauncey Clark has been a member of the Sullivan's Island Town Council since 2013 and is presently the Mayor Pro-Tem. Now he wants to become mayor to tackle issues in and around the island. I talked one-on-one with him for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Chauncey Clark, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Well, thank you for having me, Quintin. I appreciate your offer to talk to you and look forward to hearing more about you.
Yes, sir. You know, obviously you are the Mayor Pro-Tem for the town of Sullivan's Island, and you know, I'm at the town of Sullivan's Island almost every week. And I know you've been on council since 2013, but now you're looking towards the future because you want to be the next mayor of the town of Sullivan's Island. Tell me, why Chauncey Clark? Why Sullivan's Island?
Why Sullivan's Island and not a mayor somewhere else? Well, I think I have a better shot here than anywhere else. But yeah. As you said, I've been on council for going on 8 years and planning before that. And when I moved here in '95, I had no intention of becoming politically involved. But we settled here. Our family's here. We have 2 kids across the river in Mount Pleasant with 5 grandkids. We became involved with it. I'm very involved with lots of volunteer organizations. And this is another volunteer organization because the pay is not very good. And just started out planning and working my way through the ranks, and Mayor Pro-Tem, and the next logical step is mayor, and I think that's why I'm here, and I really think that I have a lot to offer.
I'm gonna get to that in just a second. You talk
Yeah,
about
I'm sure you will.
Yeah, I know you said you moved to Sullivan's Island back in the day when it was great back in '95. What is the biggest difference between 1995 and now when you think of the town of Sullivan's Island?
Well, Quintin, as you know, there's a lot of differences and there's a lot of similarities. The similarities are we're still a beautiful beach town. We still have a beautiful neighborhood. We act like a neighborhood. We don't act like a resort. We have a town hall. We have police. We have fire. It's just a town. And we have the fortunate thing to have the beach. The unfortunate thing is because it's the beach for so many in the area. That includes Somerville, Monk's Corner, all around. That's a beeper. Sorry, I can't help you with that. All around, and they come to the beach. And I mean, IOP, Sullivan's, and Folly. So the traffic has increased. The need to take care of those people has increased, and so that's the biggest difference, I think. But we can still retain the neighborhood.
What do you want to retain right now?
Well, my hope is to retain what we have, but I think it's going to be more and more difficult over time. But what I want to retain now is what we're losing in this divisiveness right now in the moment on the island. And I want to bring the council together in a comfortable way, and I want to bring the island together. That's probably my main goal.
And I know that when you sent me the email just the other day outlining what you'll be doing over the first 100 days if you're elected, you say, hey, listen, Sullivan's Island is changing eternally and externally. What are those other changes externally and externally?
Well, I think internally we've changed from a quiet after World War II. If you think of the island, it's been here a long, long time, and the history goes back a long, long ways. Yes. And so the tenor and the people that live here changed, and so we're dealing with that. And now we have resources. We're trying to fix things up and make things work. Externally, as I mentioned, the growth in the area is one of the things we're dealing in. We want to take care of those people, but they have to understand that we're paying a lot of taxpayer money to do that. Certainly willing to do that to a point.
And you also said this too, we need leadership that will get us out of the first gear and embrace the challenges and opportunities that change provide. What challenges do you embrace right now, Chauncey?
Well, I think everybody's talking about the same thing, the infrastructure, the storm drainage, the surging, the tides, the rising water. We're looking at a 50-year problem. I'd like to look down the road 50 years, 20 years, and 5 years. So in 50 years, where are we going to be? Where's the tide going to be? What do we have to do to accommodate for that? And so that's where I am. And then 5 years is a shorter window where we can accommodate immediate needs in that regard to carry us through to the point where we can perhaps put a lot of money into this island for resiliency. And so that's where I am.
And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But you talk about the first 100 days. You said you would immediately execute an outreach plan to the South Carolina state government and congressional delegation to ensure that Sullivan's Island is considered as a part of President Biden's $2 trillion Americans Jobs Plan. Who are you reaching out to right now in Columbia and Washington?
Well, right now we're reaching out to the Councilman Bustos and others and Chip Campson for some of the things. We've talked to them a lot about other things and this as well. So I think this is a state beach. We operate as a sort of a park, and we don't ask for renourishment money, but we might need some help to take care of the things and needs for the visitors we have from, as I say, the state. Federally, when this happened before, back in the Obama days, there was more money put out than buckets to put it in. We have a lot of needs for buckets for traffic and congestion and storm drainage and beach access. And so when this happens in Washington, you have to prepare with grants, letters, maybe visits to create buckets for that place, for that money to go. Trillions of dollars.
Trillions of dollars. And what do you need how much money do you need as far as renourishment?
Well, it's interesting, Quintin. We don't usually ask for any. I go to the beach advocates meeting every year, and all the other beaches, most of the other beaches, I think all of them to my knowledge, ask for beach renourishment. And it comes in the form of millions of dollars worth of sand or beach sand. And the rationale there is when they send $3 million to Myrtle Beach sends back $90 million in tourism and so forth in revenue. So the state understands math. We don't ask for anything because we don't really we have an accretion issue, not an erosion issue. There's erosion on the island, and we do want to look at those areas on each end for those folks. But and maybe we'll cross that bridge when we come to it with beach advocates. But so we're trying to refocus them on what our needs are to accommodate the same thing for the tourism in the area. So.
Yes, sir. And what are those erosion areas that you're focused on right now on the island?
Well, at each end, where you have inlet zones, like at Breach, a lot of erosion down there, and then on the other end by the harbor, we have erosion on some of that area. And all those areas come and go. But they're generally continuing to erode. At some point, and some of the residents take care of their own erosion issues. But at some point, we may have to get into that to look at some help with that.
And I know something else you need help with is obviously landing zones. You said they have been located at the ends of the islands, but more landing zones need to be established across the island. Where exactly are optional zoning lands should be happening on the island?
Well, I'm around the helicopter pod.
Right.
So I know I can land anywhere. I'm not so sure I could land anywhere today, but I could then. But I think I can. But so we have these emergency paths. We have the beach. We have anywhere on the island to land. On the causeway, you could, and they put it down almost anywhere. You never know where a helicopter pilot's going to land. But the zones we created are at each end and on the mound. And so when we have a lockup in traffic like we've had most recently, and you can't get through, and you have an ambulance that can't get through because there's no place to pull over, people aren't paying attention, whatever the reason, and it's up to the first responder to call the helicopter. So when the helicopter is called, it's serious. So that guy needs to get to the scene of the accident, not at some end of the island or something on the mountain where you have a guy in a back brace that's coming up the mountain, on the hill on the mountain, on the mound with a pickup truck. So my thinking is there are places to land around each emergency path. So that's what I'm going to look at. I'm going to make it happen.
You want to looking at it, make it happen.
By the way, you don't want to land on the beach necessarily. Mm-hmm.
Right. Right, exactly right. Yes, sir. And let me turn to obviously something that's been a hot topic, and you know probably more about it than most people. That is the Maritime Force. How do you describe the Maritime Force these days?
Well, I mean, the Maritime, how do I describe it these days?
Yes,
I think these days we had to go to court to settle this compromise. And it's unfortunate we had to do that. But these days, the court settlement is completed. The last step is to have OCRM and the Corps and DHEC review the plan that has been developed as a result of the agreement by engineers in concert with DHEC. And they'll go and do their review, and then they'll come back. And I don't think those agencies are going to let us just decimate the forest. So that's going. We're waiting for their report, and based on that report, we'll move forward. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding with regard to a lot of things, that why the courts settled and how it was settled, and also how much for cutting. So we sent a lot of information out to people to them to look at that, and I hope they do. But I think what we accomplished was exactly the place where everybody's dissatisfied equally. So, and that's what happens in mediation.
What are you dissatisfied about when it comes to the Maritime Force?
I'm not dissatisfied about anything about the Maritime Forest per se. As a matter of fact, I think that the Maritime Forest is a valuable asset. The question is, how do you manage that Maritime Forest? How do you open it up for visibility, for walks through, for birds, for whatever? And I think if you think about all those things, what we're trying to do is come to some term to manage the forest and not let it be completely unmanaged across the whole front of the beach.
Let me ask you this. I know obviously there's been some recent votes recently, but I went back and did my research, but wasn't it a conflict of interest for you to vote to limit the wax myrtles in front of your house to at least 3 feet?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, wasn't it a conflict of interest for you to vote to limit the wax myrtles in front of your house to 3 feet?
Well, the 3 feet came from the original mediation agreement, and also what was done passed before the land trust agreement was drawn together. It was a 3-foot cut minimum. And so that evolved to 7 feet, and then the workers couldn't cut it 7 feet, so they moved down to 5 feet. So traditionally, since the land trust agreement and a few years after, we've been cutting the myrtles to 5 feet. And so the agreement was asking for cutting the myrtles to 3 feet and taking out 50%. Well, it turns out we don't take out 50%. We leave those in because of the root system, but we cut them down lower, and then the rest I think it's all 3 feet now. And it's just something that's been done, and that's all that's happening. It's basically the same plan, and the owners pay for it.
And what's the root system?
Root system?
Yes, sir.
One of the things we have to understand is the topo, the dune system, is critical, super critical for resiliency. That's what really works for storm surge and all those issues. And we recently had a flood maps redone based on the distance and the topography. And our rating went for the most part, from a V velocity zone to an AE zone, which is not velocity from the sea because of that topo. The root system in the myrtles and the trees and the things that are out there hold that dune together. But the trees and are going to be maintained. The root system, even the ones we cut, we're maintaining the root system, and the rest of the trees will stand. So that's what's important, holding the topo together. Topo is critical.
Now, you said most of the owners may have to pay for, something in regards to that. What are you paying?
I pay. We all pay for whatever is done to manage the forest in front. The only difference is the town will pay. We have a transition zone that runs 100 feet in front of every house on the beach. So the town will pay for the clearing of that area. There's not much left in that project because, we've done it down to 16. We've done it at several places already. Some of it paid for the town, some by owners. But for the most part, the biggest part of the compromise, before the compromise in the last mediation, the town was going to pay for all of that. And in this compromise, the big change was the cost for cutting and maintaining management. It went to the landowners, to the adjacent property owners, and took the burden off the town.
And what's the general cost for that?
No idea. I mean, the management plans going forward, it's going to be expensive. Most of the land is delineated as a wetlands area, so managing in that environment requires you can't go in there with any kind of big equipment. You have to do it by hand for the most part, and so it's going to be fairly expensive.
Now, was it a conflict of interest for your council member Tim Reese to vote on wax myrtles since he's a real estate agent?
I'm not sure what that means in terms of a real estate agent, but the wax myrtles have been cut for years. The same, nothing's changed there.
Now, if the plan goes due, will the forest be, in some people's mind, obsolete?
Will the what?
Will the forest be obsolete in some people's mind?
Forest?
Yes, sir.
No, I think most of the forest remains. I see, especially down at 16, they're not really going to probably have much of a view, but they're going to have an openness and a breeze and so forth, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here. No, there's nothing. And by the way, beyond 16, the forest in front of Fort Moultrie, nothing's happening there. The only thing we've done there over the years is put a nature trail through there, and that's being maintained. But no, there's going to be forest here.
And what's your definition of deforestation?
Well, deforestation. Well, in NOM we called it Agent Orange, but that's not what I see here. I see that we are going to manage to a degree that makes it comfortable for everybody, and so that word deforestation came out of the rhetoric having to do with politics, in my opinion, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we're pitting against each other based on rhetoric, and I think we all need to read what's going on, understand what's going on, and this issue has been divisive for a long time. I think it's settled, and we need to move on. And people have said they criticized me for saying that, but my goodness, let's move on. This is an island that needs to come together, not apart.
Do you agree with the last land trust?
The last land trust, which
back in the 80s.
Only one that I know of.
Yeah, back in the 80s. Yes, sir.
Back in 91?
Right.
Yeah, I agree with it. The problem, Quintin, is how do you interpret it? Leave it as natural means manage it as it was in 91, which is the way some interpret it, or let it grow wildly and open. That's the other interpretation. So those ends had to meet in the middle, and that's what this mediation was about.
And I hate to be redundant, but how do you interpret this?
I interpret it based on the things that I've seen, and this is not necessarily because it's a biased answer, but if you look at what was asked to be done during the time of the agreement, taking photos, keeping records of what it looks like at the time of the agreement to see what it should be over the time, and I also see it as a contract about what has to happen between the parties. At that time, it wasn't between the parties. There were no parties dividing the two, but over time it evolved to a divisiveness over the differences of opinion.
What is the current bird and insect population on the island?
Insect?
Yes, sir.
You mean like mosquitoes?
Yes, sir. All of that. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Mosquitoes. Well, that's another whole topic. If you talk to the mosquito control people, the easiest place for them to control mosquitoes is open land. They just spray it and it hits the ground. Where they have problems is where you have vegetation in between the helicopter and the seed. It has to get through the vegetation. So by clearing and opening, we're going to help that process. So I think the mosquito control will be improved to some degree. There are a lot of mosquitoes, and when it rains, millions of mosquitoes are hatched, and that's the nature of this island. I think we're going to have to deal with mosquitoes and traffic as a force of nature.
And what is the current bird population there?
I haven't counted them today, Quintin. I was out last week looking at them, and I think there was 4,567,635 birds out there.
Wow. Now, let me ask you this.
Don't forget, Quintin.
No, of course not. Of course not. How do you protect the vegetation on the island?
How do I protect it? I
Yes, sir.
manage it. And going back to birds, I think that people misunderstand that what we're going to do is make the birds all go away. There's plenty of places for the birds to land. And as a matter of fact, working with the people on the bird population program, we saw where trees fell into their places where they were putting up nets. And I think what we can do is control and create a better place for their netting program for banding. There's a place where we can have these birds populate, and all that. None of that goes away. That's all staying. And in fact, I think we could even enhance what they're trying to do. But getting back to your next question,
Yeah, what current engineering study are you looking at right now?
engineering studies. Well, of course, we have one going for the about $250,000 grant. We're going for the storm drainage. I'm looking at an engineering plan to look at the backside mitigation for storm surge. That will come available in November-ish.
Okay.
In November, hopefully between now and then, I'll look at about 15 other grants to see what may be better for that process. But the grant business is something important to us to fund these engineering studies to get it ready to make them, as they say, shovel ready.
Right.
We had an engineering plan done on the front beach in 2010. It talked about topo management. It talked about resiliency. At that time, that current council decided not to include that. And so I think we need to look at those as well in some time in the future. So engineering is a big part of what we do here.
Now, do you think by cutting down those wax myrtles, will your property be enhanced by the way you voted?
The wax myrtles you keep bringing up, I think the wax myrtles have always been pretty much the same. I don't know that it'll affect my vote is going to be based on a lot more than the wax myrtles, or for that matter, the created land, because we're beyond that.
Now, is your property value still the same because of the wax myrtles?
I don't think the wax myrtles, but if they're managed,
Okay.
the wax myrtles will not affect the property value. If they're not managed, it will dramatically affect the property values.
Now, have you been able to visit the Maritime Force lately?
All the time.
Okay.
I ride my bike almost every day.
Yes, that's
I go
right.
through one of the paths every day, and so yeah. And what I look forward to is a place where we can walk through, see into, walk beyond the paths, go into the forest to see things beyond. You can't get to most of the places. And the mosquito control people, if they can't get the stuff down through the trees, they have to put things in the wetlands area to control the next spread. They can't get there. They used to cut paths. They used to have paths for them to use. They can't even get there to put the stuff in there. We need to make it managed in a way we can actually get into the forest and enjoy it as a human being.
Now, let me ask you, I'm going to have to ask you this question here, but how can you believe in resiliency, Chauncey, and stormwater if you are, in some people's mind, tempted to cut down trees and not really keep the forest?
That question was multifaceted. Can you say it again, please?
Yes, sir. How could you believe in resiliency and stormwater, as you say, if other people are saying you're trying to cut down trees and not save the forest?
Okay, that gets down to interpretation. It is true that forests and trees have, mostly myrtles, have something to do with velocity. Okay. They have nothing to do with holding back a storm surge. The tree, if you imagine water coming across the dunes and going through, and having a tree hold the water back, it really doesn't work that way. It has to be topo. And if you talk about storms of category 4, 3, and 4, 5, the trees become missiles. And so when I grew up in Florida, having been my whole life been through many, many storms, and we were told to trim back, get the trash out in the street, get the trash pulled away before hurricane season. There was a reason for that. I also worked with the civil defense in Florida and drove around in hurricanes, during hurricanes, and saw what happened. So my house is on the front beach, and when it happened here in 89, when Hugo happened, none of my windows were broken, because clear air doesn't break windows. Air with a tree limb in it does. So there's got to be an understanding of what we're talking about when we're talking about protection by trees. Depends on the storm. If it's a low storm, the trees block the wind, true. Above 2 and 3, it's a different story. And Hugo basically wiped out most every tree on the island.
Wow.
So that's what we have to plan for. Resiliency is a serious business, and we need to get serious about it.
And can you understand why people are fighting so hard to actually save the Maritime Force?
Well, I think if you take it from their point of view, I think they think it's important, and I understand that. And so that passion, I guess, is what they feel. We all have passions like Quintin, and when we get on that, we're going to hold true to it. And that's fine. I understand that. And so I can't change their mind. I can't do anything about that, but I can think about what I think is right. And that's what I'm doing.
Now, from my understanding, let me ask you this bluntly. Why has everybody who has been apparently, reportedly fined for illegally cutting down trees supporting you for mayor?
Why isn't it? What's that again, please?
Yes, sir. Why has everyone who has been reportedly fined for illegally cutting down trees supporting you for mayor?
Oh, why is anybody fined cutting down? I assume you mean on the created land.
Yeah. Why are
cutting trees everywhere?
Yeah. And why are those people who are illegally cutting down trees and getting fined are supporting you? I mean, is what I'm saying.
Well, there's people cutting trees all over the island that are backsides clearing views as well.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people cutting trees illegally.
Okay.
So I don't know who's supporting me and why in that regard. But if you're trying to say that they're supporting me because they're illegal cutters, I don't think that's the rationale. But I think the rationale is the people that have a passion for the forest. You've got to understand when you have a view of the beach, and then 5 years later you have no view of the beach, and you have that's heartfelt. When you take that away, that's a huge, huge thing to wake up to every day, a forest instead of the beach you used to know. So that's what some of those people are acting out. And I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's another passion carried forward.
And why do you think those supporters of the forest, what did you think they like about the forest?
Well, I think they like nature, just as we all do.
Yes, sir. Let me turn over to another big issue, obviously. And I've seen the signs along Jasper Boulevard and Middle Street that says, hey, no paid parking. Do you agree with Councilmember Tim Reese that paid parking is the answer?
Well, I don't think he said that, but I think maybe he did. I said paid parking is potentially an answer in the future. I've always said that as a possibility for a revenue source. I think even the mayor said he doesn't believe in paid parking now, but you never say never. So that's one of those issues that have to do with how do we handle the cost of increased influx into the island. I think what I'm trying to do is get state and federal funding, mostly state funding for that. So if that happens, if we have state funding and other sources, we can take it off the backs of the taxpayers and put it to somebody that could help us.
Let me ask you
and
this.
Then we wouldn't need
paid parking, okay. What traffic management plan does the island have for parking?
For parking?
Yes, sir.
Right now, we just have parking on the sides of the street, the DOT right away, for the most part. We don't have any big public parking lot. We don't have any place we charge parking that I know of, unless they're private. There's a couple places people run out of spaces, but it's pretty much on the sides of the road.
Any beach path maintenance in that particular plan?
Beach path maintenance has been done mostly by Greenbelt funding from the state and maybe the county. And so that's been helpful, but it's not keeping up. We got longer paths, we have more damage, we have lots of traffic, so we're having to increase our maintenance. So we budgeted for, in our current operating budget coming up, we budgeted for more taxpayer money to help pay for those beach paths.
And what will that taxpayer money be altogether?
What do you mean?
Projection-wise.
How much are we paying in taxes?
Well, how much is the taxpayer going to be paying for this?
Oh, for this. Well, we calculated the cost of providing services to the extra residents in terms of police forces and fire rescue and maintenance and taking care of the trash at about $857,456.55.
Now, let me ask you, Oh, okay.
But that's right. It's about $850,000.
Wow. And
Yeah.
let me ask you, what parking improvements are actually needed on the island?
Well, I think if you drive around after a rainy day, you're going to find mud everywhere, and the DOT has come by recently and started to fill in those holes with sand, which doesn't last, but it's a help. So it's mostly having to do with mud.
Now, how much money would you ask from the state to deal with all of this traffic, parking, other issues of quality of life?
How much would it be to what?
Yeah, how much money would you ask from the state to deal with all of this traffic, parking, quality of life issues such as what you mentioned with the mud holes?
Well, but to do the side parking in and of itself correctly, as DOT requires, cutting down 6 inches, 8 inches, and putting filter fabric and engineered fill, that's about $500,000, just on the ones that are bad now. As far as traffic flow is concerned, we need to delineate some traffic flow at the main intersection there at Middle and 22 and a half. That's a big blocker. We need to work with the surrounding communities like Mount Pleasant and get better coordinated with the traffic light at Center Street and on. And then IOP, we need to coordinate between. So the communities have to come together, and we have to work internally to make traffic work on our island.
Now, let me ask you this, Chauncey. Has the parking issue ever been brought to town council?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
We've been talking about parking and even paid parking for over 10 years. It's not a new issue at all. And I think over the last 3 years, we put together an engineered plan for traffic flow and paid parking, 2 different issues. And those are ready and talked through. Paid parking has evolved from parking meters to, phone-based systems and so forth. So all those systems are continually looking, we continually bring them forward engineering-wise, so that if and when we have to act, we can. We can't sit back and wait for the disaster to happen and then assume that we can have that available to us. So my thing is to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Have it all ready if you have to, but don't activate it until you need to.
Now, when do you hope to meet with Mount Pleasant and the Isle of Palms, obviously, to fix those traffic issues that are happening on the Isle of Palms? Excuse me, on the Sullivan's Island.
I think that's happening often. I'm not saying every hour, but a lot between the administrators of the town. That's going on all the time.
Okay.
And all I want to do is get involved to see how that works and make it and maybe help it along.
Now, if you were to be elected mayor, what will you do on day one?
Ask for a recount. No, I think what I want to do is have a meeting with the staff and with the fellow council members and talk about the direction we want to go forward with as a council. How we acted in the past, how we can act in the future. I want to listen to some ideas from all those people, and I want to do the same. I want to say this: I've visited over hundreds of homes in this last 2 months,
right,
and talked to people on the island. And what I hear from them is ideas. We have an island of really, really, really smart people, and so those ideas need to come forth. And so I want to reach out there, and I want them to reach in. I want them to offer things to us as a council, and let us be receptive to those. So the first day, I'm going to do a lot of listening, and I'm going to start compiling a direction based on that.
Chauncey Clark, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. Keep that smile running, man.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.